Hey, everybody, we're back again with another episode of Big Talk about small business. And I'm here with my buddy Eric Howerton and co-host.
What's up, Mark? You kind of jump-started that intro.
I did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
did I caught you off guard?
Not necessarily. Well, not just me, but I think the production team, the tech team too. But we're good now. Everything's
Do you
fine.
want to do it all over again?
No, that would be boring.
Okay.
For the audience. Then go ahead.
Eric, it's not as wound up today as you normally are. What's the deal?
I think it's just,
very relaxed
it's
today.
Friday, I'm just glad to get through the week, Mark, and just, just get ready for a nice, relaxing weekend.
Good.
I'm just kidding. Like, you hate that. Working for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. We have a guest with us today who's not in the studio but dialed in via remote, and this is my friend Tom Neel. Tom has a great story to tell. He is a very successful fine artist. That's not how he and I became acquainted, but we're going to talk about that today. He's also a big gearhead into cars and bikes, and that was a big part of his past. And that is how Tom and I became acquainted. We're both into motorcycles. So, Tom, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's Friday. Eric's happy, and that's all that counts.
Right.
Have you had like 100-mile ride yet today, Tom, like you normally do?
I've been pretty chill today. I got on nothing, but I did 187 on my scooter the other day, so that was
wow. 187 miles on your scooter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a 2023 Vespa 300 GTS.
Nice.
It does like 80 miles an hour. You can cover ground, and it's super fun.
Huh. They are fun.
Do you usually ride? Is that like riding like just on some back
2 lanes,
2-lane hills and winding turns and all that? Or are you hitting? How are you doing?
Well, this ride that I just did, I went up kind of a highway 321 that we have up onto the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is big out east here, and then I rode down the Blue Ridge Parkway for a while, and then came off the mountain on this twisty turn road that the scooter likes. In fact, I had this bozo behind me in a brand new Bronco that decided I wasn't going fast enough for him. So I just made him a tiny dot in my mirror in a matter of seconds. And I think he was like, well, what's this guy doing on this scooter?
He said, that ain't no moped.
That's right. The biggest problems with scooters is that when people lose their license, at least here in North Carolina, the go-to transportation is to buy a 50cc scooter because you don't need a driver's license, right? So anytime people see people on a scooter, they think they're a guy that's lost their license from drunk driving and they can't go over 25 miles an hour. And so I always have to kind of prove them wrong with my scooter. So
we have that same deal here, Tom. If you see somebody our age riding a scooter, the automatic assumption is DUI. But not ones that go 80. But anyway, now you live in North Carolina. Where are you exactly? What town?
Put your finger on Charlotte. Move north, and there's a big lake there called Lake Norman, which, because of all the NASCAR drivers that live there, it's commonly known as the Redneck Riviera. And I live on the western side of that in a little town called Denver.
Okay. So tell us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you end up in North Carolina in Denver?
I was born in Washington, D.C., raised in Maryland, migrated to Virginia. So I kind of call myself a Beltway mutt. And that's where my family was from, or as they like to say, where my people were from. And I did a couple of stints in other places. I moved to California, in Southern California in the late 70s, and then again in the mid 80s. And one time in Connecticut. But the North Carolina factor is that my wife and I were looking for something else to do. or as she said to me, I want to do something else. And I knew that either meant I was going to be moving or getting a divorce. And I wasn't getting a divorce. So we looked around, but North Carolina was a place that we had vacationed a lot. So that's how we ended up in North Carolina. So I could turn it into a longer story than it needs to be. But we moved here in 2019, about 6 months before the pandemic happened.
Oh, wow. So you haven't been there all that long.
No.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your career. I know you've had a very interesting career to get to where you are, and it certainly did not start out in art. So tell everybody a little bit about your background.
You know, I was caught up in stuff. If I gave you the earliest fun facts about me, I was a kid with dyslexia, so I had problems in school anyway before people really knew what dyslexia was. And then my parents went through a divorce when I was getting ready to go into high school. So when I went into high school, there was 2,000 kids. I had the only divorced parents, not like you'd find today, right? So it caused a lot of problems and learning things. But the one thing I was never afraid to do was work. So I worked as much as I could. And one of those jobs, because I love cars and I loved art, but one of those jobs was working with a friend of my brother's on his C dragster. So that gave me a taste into racing. And then when I got to 12th grade, I probably, I should say this, I got saved at least by one teacher, a teacher named Mrs. Heidelberger, because I was just crashing and burning. And man, I'll tell you, the power of one teacher. She got a hold of me when I was just dying in English, brought me in, and she had a class on journalism, and I ended up writing for the school newspaper, had one of the most popular articles, and found something of interest in a person that actually cared about me when my parents were yelling at each other and the whole place was self-destructing. So for me, by the time I graduated from high school, which was, I would almost classify as barely, I was a working guy. I went right to work on the one thing I thought I could make money with was cars, And so the first 10 years of my working life were all automotive related, but I kept stumbling into just wonderful things. Like I started working with a guy on the finest collection of Ferraris there was in the country at the time. They were owned by the man that owned Silvercraft Furniture Company in High Point. And I can remember things like, if you all remember the original Thomas Crown affair with Faye Dunaway and Steve McQueen, Faye Dunaway was driving a very rare 275 GT4 Roadster. And I can remember driving that car, to North Carolina. And so this collection today would be $100 million worth of cars. And the guy that I worked for really taught me some work ethic about things. We'd end the day early, and you guys remember Varsol, which you can't find anymore, but I would clean all the hoses in the shop and put them in a spiral on the floor and clean tools and stuff. So I learned a work ethic that I'd never really had before. And at the same time, there was a guy there with a funny car. So I started working on funny cars as a mechanic for those. And by and by, just different things that I did in the automotive industry. One day, unless I was going to tell the story a lot longer, I ended up in Southern California, number 3 or 4 guy at a family-owned $35 million automotive suspension company. And some people will know it as Rancho Suspension. It's a mere piece of what it is today. But there all of a sudden I was really, any business that I had learned along the way had sharpened itself right to that point. And I'm in a 150,000 square foot warehouse with train cars pulling up to the back. And it was my job to sell lots of parts. And that all worked great.
Was that Tom, was that a springboard to your current career? No pun intended.
No, it really was, because I found, little boom. But I found that what was a springboard to me was frustration. I ended up hating my job. And the one gift my father and I just argued and had a horrible relationship, but he died at 52. And the greatest gift that he gave me was showing me how short life can be. And so from that point on, I said, if I'm unhappy, I'm going after something I'm passionate about. I'm not going to die in a ball of stress over something I don't care about. And I decided right there and then I was going to be a fine artist because I had wanted to be. I wasn't going to worry about money because I had learned business. And I just figured I'd apply myself more into the creative side of things. And there I went. I walked away from that job that paid great money. My boss couldn't believe I was doing it, but I moved back to Maryland and painted day and night. And here I am today. So,
how long ago was that, Tom, that you started full time as an artist?
Well, I left there in 1986 from California, and by the time I came back, nothing happens overnight. So, I had a friend of mine that was in commercial real estate, and I started working with him. And through that, met a couple other friends. But one guy ended up being a guy named Douglas Jamal, who is still a real estate developer, well known in New York. And he used to have a business called Nobody Beats the Wiz, which was a huge,
I remember that,
$600 million electronics company. And, the one thing I have to say to everybody is that lessons come along in life, and sometimes it can be one person telling you one thing that it can change your life. Like Doug told me, he said, Tom, always talk to the horse's head, because if you're not, you're talking to the horse's ass. And I said, wow, that's a great line, but it was really true. So I made sure that as I moved through life, that I was talking to people that could make decisions and not people that had to talk to people that had to make decisions. Right?
Yep. It's such a good lesson to learn.
Yeah. But he knew, even as I was being paid and things, that art was my passion and that was the direction I was going to go in. And the other thing about it is that, as you two both know, because you're successful, you can't get anywhere if you don't intend to. So as soon as you start intending to do something, it's funny how doors just open up, and you're like walking along the airport, you're dragging the bags, and then bam, you hit this people mover and you're just moving along. And the only thing that really, really happened is that you intended to get someplace. And so many people I talk to, they're going, well, I can't make this happen. And I go, do you really intend for that to happen with this plan? And they go, well, and I go, as soon as you're going, well, you're not really sure. You got to intend for it to happen.
No question about it. You gotta be able to visualize where you're trying to go, and then you'll make it happen.
So when you were, I guess, was art really important to you when you're growing up? Younger, I didn't really catch that, how much you were painting and doing things like that before you took on the job in California.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Eric, it was, in the book I wrote, I call it my salvation, because my parents were arguing and things were tough and rough, and everybody needs something to ground them. when things are crazy. Sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's a best friend. For me, it was art. I could go and express myself. I didn't get any back talk out of it. It was just a good vibe. So when I got to that place in life where life was stressful, and for whatever reason, that job just was driving me crazy. It wasn't about people anymore. It was all about just numbers. I turned back to art, and from art, that brought me my wife, Linda, who has her own very interesting story, but she had built an art gallery, ended up being the first person to sell my art. From there, you guys will remember 1989 was an incredible year in business. 1990 was most certainly not. It was a little like we have today. We had the Gulf War. We had the country run out of money. And in our particular case, where the gallery was in a town called Leesburg, Virginia, they started to build a parking garage as we went into recession and killed all the parking spaces. But, that intention thing stayed with me. And the largest fine art publishing company, of which we sold their prints and some originals for them, out of the blue, asked us to come work for them. And so all of a sudden, I moved to Connecticut. I'm working for this huge publishing company, and kind of found myself as an artist liaison, where I was going to meet some of the best artists in the country, helping them with business while they were helping me with art. I mean, again, I hit that people mover in the airport, and I'm just fired off again like I was shot out of a cannon. And so around 1994, May of 1994, actually a bunch of those artists and my wife said, it's time for you to become a full-time painter. So that's, even though I was painting and selling my paintings through that whole time, never lost sight of that. That's when I started painting full-time. I moved out back to Virginia. We had owned a second home there. And I basically told myself at that time, you have $15,000. I gave myself a mental $15,000 loan. And I said, after 1 year, if you don't have any of it left, you're going to go get a job and you move on. And that was, a bunch of years ago. So, here we are.
Well, congratulations. That's an awesome story. That really is.
Yeah.
So Tom, you've been able to make a successful living out of your art. Why do so many artists struggle with this idea? I mean, it's sort of conventional wisdom. I think you and I told you once on one of our calls that my ex-wife and all her family were painters. And, the conventional wisdom amongst that group is, oh, you can't make any money as an artist. What is it that you did that made you successful, you think, aside from being talented? I mean, let's just say that not everybody who's as talented as you are is as successful in the art business as you are. Let's just start with that assumption.
Well, listen, Mark, I'll put the talent part aside. Let's not even, because art's all over the place. And somebody might look at my paintings and go, I don't think they're that great. And they might look at some other guy that can't make a nickel and say it's the greatest art in the world. So that's the first thing. Just put that aside. I think artists get a bad rap, mostly because they themselves are not acting professional. Artists, many of them by nature want to hide under a rock, and they want to lift the rock up and stick their hand out and grab this check that somebody's dropped by the rock and pull it back under the rock. And, they're wallflowers and things like that. And, they have to understand that if your intention is to be an artist that's going to make a living, once you take $1, you're in business. All of the rest of us that are in business or have been in business or help people with business realize as soon as that dollar comes in, that's revenue. And now what are you going to do with it? I mean, lots of businesses work for a long time before really revenue even happens. So if you're getting some money for your art, you're in business whether you like it or not, and you better accept it. And I've often told artists, especially, you're naturally going to gravitate towards classes and education that teach you about art. Just please, for God's sake, take one business class. Anything that will help you survive as an artist, just understand. And even if you're not good at business, even if you don't want to, then you need to acknowledge that you're going to have someone who is. Because if not, you're not going to make it, or you're going to be taken advantage of, right? So I used to talk to artists, and they would be around talking at an art show or something, and I'd walk up and they would go, "We don't understand how you're successful, so successful." And I would say, "Because I don't hang around you guys. I hang around people that buy art." And they would all look at each other and go, "Well," but that's what it was. So when I turned, and this wasn't something that happened overnight, but when my business was doing as good as it possibly could, I invested in nice clothes, in a member of a country club. And the number one thing I created was not art. It was opportunity. I looked for situations where I would be in an environment where, hey, lots of business is done at a country club or fine dining restaurants and places like that have nothing to do with art. But you think of all the deals that go on. This is where business is done. And so for me, I could either have a gallery go and do it. Well, I've owned a couple of galleries and I've directed a very large one. To me, if I was going to do this myself, I needed to put myself out there. I needed to look like somebody that wasn't living in a gutter, and I needed to be responsible. And so that's the biggest thing. I want everybody to know, let's just say anybody out there is a creative type. You can be an animator for Pixar and make a good living. You can be a fine artist painter. You can be a photographer. You can be a website developer. It's still all going to come down to, you better understand how the business that you're in works, and or you will fail. It's not a mean thing. That's the environment.
And talk to the head of the horse instead of the rear of the horse, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely the case. And I even on that level, Mark, I've told many people that just have jobs. If you work for a company, any job, your number one job when you get inside that company is to understand how revenue comes into that company. Because the closer you are to that, the more you are protected and the less chance you're going to get laid off. When things are bad, they go lay off the mailroom guy or whatever. They're not laying off people that are bringing in revenue. So at least understand how revenue comes into the company. And if you're a small business, just a business of one person, never take your sight off how your revenue is coming in, right? It's not just dropping out of the sky. So
I'm curious now. I know you do commissioned art, and then you also do art that you just want to do and you sell, right?
Right.
What's the breakdown there between commissions and stuff that you just
what
want to do?
What does commission art mean?
Meaning somebody pays you specifically to create a piece of art for a location or a building or to meet whatever their goal is.
Got it.
Their wishes. So to me, I did gallery paintings that would hang in a gallery, and I did commissioned art, and really more towards, let's say, the last third of the time that I've been a painter, I focused well, I'm not going to say 100%, but pretty close to 100%. My brain was on commissions. And, at times I would have a dozen commissions lined up. And my average painting was $6,000 to $10,000. And I was mindful of customer service. That was all important to me. I remember an artist one time saying to me, she said, "I've got this commission to do and it's making me a nervous wreck." And I said, "Why?" And she says, "I don't know. I took it and I have to wrap my brain around it and everything." I said, "Well, when did you take this commission?" She said, "Well, it's been almost a year ago." I said, "You don't have a commission. That horse is gone. You've already lost it. And you've made it harder for people like me that really do follow through." So if I did a commission for somebody, I told them when they were going to have it. I made it in them important and to understand. If they needed something quicker, then I would turn to my other customers and say, "This has occurred. Can I hold you off a little bit to try to finish this project for them?" I did commissions for, Lockheed Martin, lots of hospitals and things like that. But those people want follow through. So for the most part, 80% of the artists out there couldn't do what I was doing because they really had to focus 80% on business and 20% on art,
Well, they're too undisciplined. I mean, let's be honest about it. You're disciplined, and it applies to everything, including how you communicate with your clients. Why do you think these artists are just so disorganized and unwilling to basically do what they need to do? Because so many of them do fit that mold.
Well, art's one of those types of things. There are people that are trained artists that go to art school and college and all the rest of that type of thing. But schools, generally speaking, are not teaching business of art to people making art. So that's part of the problem. And I don't know. I'm amazed I don't want to get into a political thing, but I'm amazed we live in a world where somebody that cuts hair, which is an artistic thing, needs to be licensed, but the president of the United States doesn't have to take a class on how to be the president.
It is a little bit ironic, isn't it?
Right. You'd think you'd have to take a year class just to understand how the government works and generally speaking, but no, the person that cuts hair, my father used to tell me the difference between a good haircut and bad haircut back in his day was 4 days. Because all it has to do is grow out, it's not a big deal. But we go ahead. Well, artists never get to a place where they are required to think that they need to know anything about business.
Well, I think to a certain extent they shun it. It's not just that they think that they don't need to know it. It's that they're actually against it. Yeah. That somehow if I learn about business, I've sold out to, whatever it is. And, and I'm no longer an artist.
Well, they are creative thinkers, right? I mean, it's, right. But what I am really enjoying about this conversation is that we're talking about something that, like, it kind of brings us back to the fundamentals and the basics in a lot of ways, because when you said the country club thing, it just struck me, and I've always just kind of not understood how true artist painting business works. I never really even considered it. You just kind of think of the ones that are famous and whatever, that the galleries and it's just there's only one in millions that could ever make a living in art, just like what we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
But I love what you said though, Tom. I mean, that's so cool. Because it's true, because it's kind of I can kind of identify with that a little bit because I did have a photographer in a creative studio at one time. I was behind a camera and behind the computer all day, designing, trying to be creative. And then one day I sold all that. And it's like, and I showed up at the country clubs or whatever and started writing marketing plans and making sales presentations.
Yep.
But I mean, and then you brought up like
you said that in a podcast recently. Yeah. It's really funny. It does tie into that.
It does.
Yeah.
And then, but what I loved was you talked about the commission stuff, and you focus on where there's money to be made, and you could fund what you love to do. It's all tied to your passion. But then you really owned up to the customer service and the service of the client. Like, so a quick question on that, though. Do you get some joy out of providing that service to the clients? Like, I mean, is that some way to, like, does it express your creativity a little bit? Like, do you?
Oh, my God, yeah. I have to tell you, just as an example, imagine there's a couple, and this has happened to me, and they've been married for 50 years. You think about all the trials and tribulations, up and down, things that they've had, children, this and that and the other thing. And they come to you, and for their 50th anniversary, they want you to paint a painting to celebrate their marriage. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm like, I can't believe it that these people went through 50 years of marriage, and then they're asking me to paint for them. And I've done this as, retirement gifts for people that started a company when I was born. And I'm thinking, wow, this person started a company in 1955 because I'm an old guy. And here they are years later asking me to paint to celebrate the occasion of their retirement or something like that. So yeah, I get a lot of that. I never want anybody to think that I ever banged out a painting because of money, because I never did. I worked on one at a time and put all my attention and love into it. I never want to think anybody that anybody would think that I never cared about art or didn't have a passion for it. But I was a one-man company, and I had a product. And the product is, you either got a service or a product. And sometimes me as a person was a service because people asked me to speak and do all those types of things. I did everything that I could do as a one-man company. And now listen, my wife, Linda, she was part of the company too, but she had her own things going on. But it was really me making a product. And I've had people, I'll tell you a great art story. We had a gallery, and I'm not going to say the artist's name in case there's any way I could get back, because I haven't talked to this artist in years, but he was a potter. And he did this beautiful pottery with leaves all over it and stuff like that. He came to the gallery with 20 new pieces that he was going to be dropping off to us. And he put down this platter, and then he would go, how much is this platter going to be? This is a long time ago, back in the late 80s. And he goes, that'll be $35. Then he pulls this other platter out that looked, guys, I'm talking about pretty identical for a handmade piece of pottery. And I go, okay, so 2 times 35. And he goes, what? And I said, what? And he goes, I can't believe. He goes, don't you see how this glaze moved this way and that way, and this happened and this happened? And I said, yeah, but nobody that walks through the door is going to think that's 35. And what do you want for this one? He goes, I want 65 for this one. I picked up that piece of pottery and I handed it to him, and I said, I want you to do this. I want you to take this home and love it to death. And when you're done loving it to death, bring it back to me and I'll sell it for $35, like that one right there. And he looked at me dumbfounded. But I told him, I said, you have to understand that this is not going to be seen. You're not going to get 100% more for this one over that one. So, all of these things are, what I would like to tell artists if you really want to have fun with your art, learn about the business of your art. You'll find that it's almost recreational. You love to paint and everything else, but don't despise business. Just understand that they're not these pieces you paint. If they're your children, hang them on the wall and enjoy them. You're not going to be a working artist. But if you want to be a working artist, then all you really need to do is understand that you're making a product and learn everything you can about selling a product or a service, period. There's books, there's classes, there's all kinds of things. But if you're going to fear it, or you're going to be a wallflower to it, you're going to struggle way, way, way more than you need to do. That's all it is.
Makes sense. What advice do you give to these creative people that you run into? Because I know you know a lot of people, you run into a lot of other people who are trying to make or do something that's creative and make a living off of it. Aside from learning about business, which I completely agree with, and I think I might have told you this before, but I used to teach a class here at the Fay Jones School of Architecture, and the title of it was "Everything They Don't Teach You in Architectural School." And it was true. It was a lot of business stuff, because the architects are just exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
They're being
you
trained.
built a whole business on that.
Yeah. I mean, our business provided,
business advice for architects and engineers,
business advice to architects and engineers. But, a lot of them have these completely dysfunctional attitudes. They don't know anything at all about selling or billing or pricing or, cash flow, dealing with banks, whatever. But aside from learning about business, what advice do you give these people, and particularly about marketing themselves? Yeah, buy nice clothes, go to a country club, but what else?
Well, I mean, there is, but you just have to understand that sometimes you're the product, and it's amazing when people are buying art. A lot of times they want to be directly connected to the artist. I mean, I've gone to parties, guys, where people are walking around the room, and this guy's a dentist, and this guy's this, and they find out I'm an artist, and they're glued to me. And very often, the thing that they say to me, this is an indirect way to your question, Mark, but people in general can be this way. I've had many people, smart people, wealthy people, say to me, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. And I'll be at a party with them, and I'll say, all right, so we got to find a ruler. And they go, what are you talking about? And I go, well, we're going to get you over that tonight, right now. And they go, well, you know what I mean. And I go, no, I actually don't know what you mean. I go, nobody comes out of the womb an artist. Nobody comes out of the womb, a CEO. You learn these things. But if you just say to yourself, I'm not creative and I'm not that good, and you compare yourself, you're not going to apply to yourself what you need to become good anyway. Right. So I'd say that's the first thing. You got to believe in yourself. Then you stand for something. If you, at the very least, stand for yourself. I've seen artists at shows where their painting's on the wall, and the gallery director wants them to be out and mingling, and they're like stuck against the wall and sliding down and, not applying themselves. But the customers out there don't want to bite you. They want to love and hug you. They think you're cool. They think that I will remember one time I was at a show, and there was a guy that had bought one of my paintings, or two of my paintings, and it was up in Vermont. And he said to me, he goes, God, your creativity is just so amazing to me. I just wish I had some of that. And I go, what do you do? And he said, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. And I said, whoa. I said, so you're the guy like that when my mom broke her hip, made a 9-inch cut down the side of her leg, cut off something that God or science created, put a new bone in there, realigned it, and got her to walk straight again without a broken bone. I go, how are you not creative? And he looked at me and he goes, my God, I wish you were in med school with me. He goes, all they teach us is protocol, and no one has ever said I was creative. And I said, well, let that be done tonight. I'm calling you creative. And it was like I released this guy from prison. It was amazing.
Well, and I mean, there's 2 points like what you were making. First one is it's like how some folks need to understand they're creative. Creatives need to understand that they actually do have business sense, and they can learn that, right? Like you're talking about the ruler. Like being an artist, you have to work and apply and study it and practice it and go for it.
Right. There's a discipline of business knowledge. As well.
And you got to do that as an artist. I think that's kind of revealing to me in the sense that, because I do know so many artists, right, and creatives that they don't think that way naturally, like a business person would, but then they block themselves from even skipping over that fence to be successful on their own because they don't think that they have the capacity or capability, but they actually do. Because
the programming, the self-affirmation that I can't do this, I don't want to do this, I'm not good at this.
Right, and you have to be natural at it. You have to be good at numbers to be in business, and you don't.
I mean, dude, I just had this conversation with my 17-year-old Wednesday about her inability to pass the driver's test.
Yeah.
I can't drive. I'm not going to be good. I'm never going to be a good driver. I'm like, you cannot keep playing that record over and over in your mind, or you will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think what Tom said makes a lot of sense, that you gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, and everything, and a lot of things can be learned, especially in business, right? And like,
it's not that
you can
hard.
learn to sell.
Yeah,
you can learn to market. You can learn to write contracts. You can learn to provide customer service. You can learn to do billing and cash flow statements.
Yeah. No,
you don't have to be an expert in everything.
It's not brain surgery or orthopedic surgery.
Right. Yeah, it'd be hard. But you can still learn to do that if you wanted to. The other thing, Tom, I really liked what you talked about was, and I'm glad you said it, is that in all actuality, as an artist, you do have an advantage of selling that it is hard for other salespeople to do, like that are professional salespeople, because artists are cool.
Yeah. No, that's
true.
People
are very interested. Like if I have interest in, like if I was going to commission, Tom to do some paintings for me, I am like intrigued and wanting to see what you come up with. Right. Like I'm excited and about this genuine, this authenticity, this creativity.
But you know what? It ties right into an article I read. It might've been this morning. I can't remember because I get up early and I stay up late sometimes reading.
Everything's a blur.
As you know.
Yeah.
But no, it was, Tom, you'll appreciate this too. It was saying, content marketing's the big buzzword today. Okay. If you were selling truck parts, you'd be putting articles out about how, performance stats and, reliability and functionality and race victor, whatever was related to these parts. And that would be considered content marketing. And we use social media for that. But what this author was saying is really content marketing's dead. What really matters is the person. People want to get to know you, the person behind the content marketing, which is exactly what you're saying. Okay. And it doesn't matter what the hell you're selling.
If you're selling art or anything, if you're a salesperson and you're selling something, the first thing that you have to make people like is you. Way before the product. Otherwise, you might as well just send the product to their door and see if they like it, and don't use the salesperson. So,
and you said something earlier too, Tom, I think goes along with that, because you are selling you, and you're also selling like your reputation. And if you, it's like when you said you put all your love into that piece of work, right? And you did that because it's your product, but I can guarantee you that you didn't even say this, but I can maybe predict that if I commissioned you to do a piece of artwork, you went out and you put your love in it and you brought it back to me. And I was like, man, I just don't like it. You know, I was expecting or wanting something else. I can bet you that you would probably try to find a way to make good and make that client happy because that's what you do. Am I right on that?
Yeah, it's true. And I will tell you, in the literally hundreds of commissions that I've done, I will admit, because I think this is a good thing in business to do, in the 35 years of doing paintings and during that time painting for other people, I have had 2 or 3 people that were a problem for me. 2 or 3.
That's pretty damn good track record.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
One of these people I made a mistake on. This is a business mistake. I should have never taken this commission. This person bought a couple of paintings from me, then wanted me to paint this painting. And every time I was talking to her, she was talking to me about problems that she had in her life. Now, I've had to listen to a lot of problems go on when people are saying, right? So I'm listening to all this kind of stuff. But I said, I need to get some answers about this, and this. And she was always like, oh, well, I got to go. I'll call you back. And she wouldn't call me back. So when the painting finally got done, her husband loved the painting, but she didn't love the painting. And so here I was, I'd invested all this time. And the husband's like going, honey, I love this painting. And she's like going, this is not what I wanted. And I will tell you, gentlemen, I said, you know what? You're going to have to figure that out, because every time I tried to talk to you about these things, you went in a different direction. You didn't want to talk to me. So that thing with the customer's always right. My customer right now is your husband. He seems to like the painting. I'm going to have to walk away from this one. Right. But those cases were so incredibly rare that I just chalked it off that this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. So, but for the most part, I bent over backwards for people.
I'd like to take this a little bit different direction too. Okay. My guess is, knowing you and how meticulous you are with every single thing you have and how serious you are about your commitments to deliver things on time, my guess is that your work area is pretty clean, you're organized, and that you have certain times that you work instead of just any time. Am I right about that?
You would actually be partially right. My work area is generally pretty clean, but I can have this disarray that goes on because of dyslexia. I take a lot of things and I have them out of my head on the table, as it were.
I know so many successful people with dyslexia. I mean, it's insane the number of CEOs and entrepreneurs I know have dyslexia, but go on.
And because I'm a writer, and if you treat that like painting, writing is one of those things where it's not just spelling words wrong. They come out all kind of different ways. So writing for me is a battlefield, and my brain can be 3 sentences ahead of where I am trying to fix a word that something comes out SMETH, and then I'll spell it, and then the next time I spell it a completely different way. So for painting, I kept pretty clean. I wasn't one of those people that always had paint all over my pants and stuff like that. Part of that also is a health issue. I don't think it's good to have paint around your cuticles and things. So, I'm a little like that. But I
know somebody got poisoned.
Really?
Yeah. Remember Dalva Duarte I mentioned to you, who is the painter?
Yeah.
She got poisoned by her own paint, like moistening her brush in her mouth or whatever she did. And
well, it's you got things like heavy metals like cadmium and things like that are in paint, so it's not good. So to a degree, you're right, Mark, but I don't want to come in like a flying angel and say everything was spotless and clean, because I'm not 100% that way.
What about your work hours? Do you have that scheduled, Tom?
Yeah, and I always called to people that asked. I always said I was a hit and run painter. So the easel would be there. I might wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go in and paint. I never painted 8 hours. I always wanted to walk away from artwork and come back and look at it. So I might paint for 45 minutes, go look at an email, come back, paint for an hour and a half, go away, look at it. I might be painting at 10 o'clock at night. I might be painting at 4 o'clock in the morning. I lived on a big piece of property and had to mow a lot of grass. And so if I needed to mow the grass on Tuesday, I'm going to mow the grass on Tuesday, and the paint, I'll do it another time.
That's my future business idea.
Hey, I'm in on that. Mowing grass. I got a good zero turn, man.
What's that? Oh, good zero turn. Yeah. I want to start something called the Old Man's Lawn Club.
Can I be in with you?
You can be in. We'll let you in. Where we all just talk about how mowing puts us in a Zen-like meditative state, and what types of tools and equipment and techniques we like to use. Because
a great story for you. You guys are going to like this story. I'm on a plane flying to Albany, New York, and there is a guy beside me who, just for your audience, I'm only saying that he was gay because he was openly gay and funny as hell. So we're flying along and he's talking and doing all this kind of stuff. And after a while, he tells me this story about his father. He says, my dad's got a pretty high pressure job. And he goes, when he can't take it anymore, he has a helicopter fly him to our farm in the Adirondacks, and he gets on a bush hog and he bush hogs until he can't bush hog anymore. I said, wow, that's amazing. And so I said, your dad sounds like he's a mover and a shaker. And I go, by the way, we haven't introduced ourselves. What's your name? And he goes, my name is Ed Merrill, and my father is Merrill of Merrill Lynch. My mother is Lynch of Merrill Lynch. And I went, what? And I never knew that the reason the Lynch family, like if you work for Safeway, she is the heir to Safeway. And that's why when you work for Safeway, your retirement is in Merrill Lynch because of the connection there. So, and he was actually the guy I caught him on the way to, was in charge of what they were going to do with Stapleton Airport in Denver when they closed it down to open the new Denver airport. So he was just on a business flight, but I was, there you go, Merrill. I mean, Merrill's out there when he can't handle it. He's bush hogging.
I tell you, I wish they'd never closed down Stapleton. It was so nice. You flew in, you were so close to town. DIA was out in the middle of nowhere. I did a review of that airport when it opened up because it was horrible. But anyway, that's funny. I
was just there 2 weeks ago to Denver, and it was a madhouse.
I grew up next door to Roger Riney, who's the one who started Scott Trade. And my dad gave him books to read, like, Sloane's book and Deming's book and stuff like that. Because Roger would talk with him when he was young. Of course, now he's a billionaire,
Mm-hmm.
He's in poor health right now. But anyway, it is funny how those people, his dad was a lawn cutter. Roger Sr. was always out there on his Gravely tractor with the pipe hanging out of his mouth. And he lived to be 100 years old, cutting grass. But anyway, Tom,
there you go.
So where do you go from here? I mean, how long are you going to continue doing what you do? What are your plans at this point?
Well, I call myself semi-retired. I'm still a writer. I'm painting.
Tom has a book. I'm sorry, Tom, but I did want to mention your book, Living an Artful Life. But he also writes a lot of articles on.
I get it up here. You guys can buy it on Amazon, but it's digital form only now. But Live an Artful Life was the name of my company that I have with my wife. And this book, I think, is a good book. I don't want to overplug this book, but I think this book is just a good book for people that have gone through life and they're missing creativity and they want to put creativity back in their life. It's kind of a guide to that. So Live an Artful Life, you can find on Amazon under my name.
Awesome.
It's very easy read, and it's really good writing. But anyway, Tom writes a lot of articles and blog posts to this day on a variety of subjects, including motorcycles.
Yeah.
So I always look forward to.
Yeah, 2 weeks from now, I'll be down in Atlanta writing an article for the Porsche Club of America. I'm driving a couple of cars like that. So I've done, I don't know, over 100 Porsche articles because I was a Porsche file.
I'm telling you, like, I think that people need to grasp, like, living the artist type life, the creative life. I mean, you can get yourself plugged into some pretty cool stuff and get paid for it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
What a life. I mean, I'm serious. Like, you took charge and were intentional, like you said earlier, about having a life, you know, doing what you love to do. And then you just applied those skills and just, you weren't afraid really to jump over and learn new things and go for it, you know? And I bet you there's so many folks that just tell themselves no right out of the gate.
They do. It's unfortunate. I mean,
it is.
For everybody who Peter principles, there are many more who are Paul principles. Meaning they don't realize their potential.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
You know, you guys, I was talking to a friend of mine who's very successful, and we were talking about the music business. And something you know something about, Mark, but I mean, I've been around a lot of people in the music business, and you see people that they're the package. They look great. They play great. They got a great sound. And I said to him, I go, boy, this is unfair, isn't it, sometimes? And he goes, hey, listen, it's that everybody can't be successful. And I said, well, if they wanted to, maybe they could, but that's just not how it works. So anybody listening to me right now that happens to, and listen, you could be a successful person. I've met people like this who paint, but they are very important and successful people. And they even go, I don't know how to convert it from my retirement into being a painter. And I'm like, all the stuff that you did to get you to this point, you're going to have to do to get you to that point. But don't think you can't. You just have to intend to do it and care about it. Now, out of that, it might be 1 in 100. It might be 2 in 1,000, whatever it is. Some people will do it, and other people, I'm just convinced, are not going to do it. They're going to be actors and actresses that wait tables, and that's what makes the world go around. But if you're intent doing it, if you really, really want to make it happen, you can't sit there and put your hands over your face and go, I hate business. You're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. You're going to have to care about it.
Business takes everything you got. It takes every skill you have.
It does, but if you want to be an artist, or you're creative and you just want to have and you want to enjoy like a life like Tom has,
with lots of motorcycles and Porsches, too.
But he, like you talked about earlier, your one-man show, almost all the time, other than your wife helping out, right, during some times. But I mean, number one thing is sales. Like if you can not do anything else, just be confident behind your art and talk to people and understand that they like you. And they're interested in you and your product, or they wouldn't talk to you. Sales and selling yourself and show up.
Right. And doing the whatever it is. And then the other thing is not giving it away.
Yeah.
Because,
Good point. Very good point.
I see this constantly in my students with their new venture plans. That's like, we're going to be the cheapest of whatever it is. I'm like, no, you're not. That's not where you want to be. As a small business, you want to be at the top of the pricing tier and do a better job than anybody else, not be the cheapest. A lot of people are just afraid to price things. Pricing is so critical.
I was talking to a guy that's in the music business, and to your point, Tom, about like there is a systemic issue with like artists, musicians, live performances. They play for free all the time, and what they don't realize is like anybody that's going to bring you into a venue or an event is in business mode thinking, right?
Sure.
And you reach out to this artist. I mean, I'm going to say, hey, you want to play at the show? And if you don't ever bring up to me that you charge, I'm never going to say anything to you ever.
You got to be willing to ask.
You have to say, well, I charge $200 for that.
And so, Eric, in the music business, listen, you find a guy with a guitar, a girl with a guitar, they go and they play at some venue, whatever it is, coffee shop, whatever you want to bring up, winery, whatever. What I'm talking about with understanding revenue, if I'm that person, I'm going to do everything in my power to understand how many people have to come in there for me to get paid. I'm going to understand what makes a good night a bad night for them. I'm going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I'm going to say, listen, if I can bring more people in, will you pay me more money? I'm going to ask for it. And if the person says, well, $200 is all I can pay you, I go, well, listen, I would go out on social media and I would blow this place up if I can do it. But if you don't care about me, I need to find somebody else. It's a give and take, but you have to understand their business if they're paying you.
You're totally right. I mean, because it could be, okay, 200, but if I bring in 50 people, you pay me 350, right? Like you up the ante because you got into their business case and needs. I mean, honestly, like that's what business is all about. It's about in vendors and contractors and partnerships, employees, everything you talked about earlier, Tom. I mean, everyone has to be aligned to that vision of creating that and driving that revenue. And if you can find a way to do that, which sounds like exactly what you've done over your career, is like you've basically have been able to put yourself in the shoes of your client.
Yep.
Which, I think when I was talking about that a little bit at your class the other day.
Yep.
There's an innate ability, and I think this might be from a creative mind, to visualize the pain points that your clients are going through. Or like from the hospitals, like, can you visualize what they're saying they need and see the hallways and see how all this flows together and what they're trying to accomplish? Maybe at hospitals are trying to let patients kind of feel discomfort or let their families feel peace. Sure. And if you can dream that up and you meet that expectations, but that means you got in line with their business.
Right. Exactly.
With their vision.
Sometimes it's being also in line with the person itself. I mean, I'll tell you a story. This doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened to me multiple times. So one time a guy called me about paintings. Didn't know him from Adam. I drive to his house. He introduces himself and his significant other. And we go in and we're talking about the paintings that he needs. But we're in a big room of a big house. And there's a bar sitting there, and a little time goes by, and then all of a sudden, a chink happens in the armor, and he goes, I really want you to do this. He goes, I'm going through this stuff. He goes, I'm going through a bad divorce, and my son's really mad at me, and all of a sudden he opened up. So by the time it was over, the two of us have been sitting there talking for 3 hours, drinking beer at his bar. Nobody's plastered. We're just two guys talking. And I said, hey, listen, I came from a divorced family before most people did. Be honest with your children. They already know something's going on. Just be straight with them. And all of a sudden, I wasn't selling art. I was just being a good guy, right? Over the next 2 months, this guy did just over the next 2 months, $40,000 worth of business with me. And that guy, that guy called this summer and said, Tom, I'm going to be down here at he's an equestrian too, and just sold his companies and has the big jet and the whole thing. And he says, I'm flying down, and he goes, I haven't seen you in a while, and I want to see you. And can you come? And it's an hour and a half away to this place. And my wife was an equestrian and everything, so they knew each other. I said, man, I'd love to see you. Let's get together. So we go there. Well, he just sold his company for $1.1 billion. Okay, that guy doesn't need Tom Neel in his life, does he? Well, but you know what? When he was down in the dumps, I was a guy that just cared about him. And I still care about him today. More than I'd write him the check back to stay his friend. You know, he's just a great guy. So sometimes when you're doing business, whether you're an artist, because it doesn't matter, but whether you're an artist or whatever, you never know when you walk in the door what the opportunity is going to be. But be open to it. Be open that on the other side of that door, I'm going to go. They called me and told me to come here. On the other side of that door is opportunity. And I'm be happy about it. Walk in there with the enthusiasm that this is going to be great. I had a customer one time call me and say, I want to come by the gallery with some paintings because I am interested in a commission or something. I said, fine. He came by and he says, well, I like that. I like that. I like that. He picked out 7 paintings on the gallery wall in my gallery. And he said, I said, well, I'll bring anything to your house just to let you see what you're looking for. He says, you'll bring these 7 paintings? I said, yeah, I'll bring the 7 paintings. I came home with 1 painting. 1. By the time it was done, we moved that painting from there and this painting from there and took this down off the fireplace. I had one customer that after buying thousands of dollars worth of artwork, they built a new home. And she said, you're the only person I trust to hang artwork in my house. I'm good at that. I made myself good at that. I hung shows for people. And all kinds
hang
of
it
things.
Too high. They always hang them too high, don't they, Tom? Drives me mad.
They hang it too high. They don't have any. I could write a book about
one
that.
Picture in the middle of each wall. We always have to hang the art for our friends too. Absolutely drives me crazy. But go on. I love it.
By the time I was done, I hung over 220 pieces of art, memorabilia, all kinds of stuff in their house. I provided a service that had nothing to do with being a painter, right? But the reason they wanted me to do it is just because they liked me and trusted me and believed in me. And I believed in them. And all these people they remain my friends. And so that's how it works sometimes. I know I don't ever want it to sound easy, but it's all doable, but you have to apply yourself and intend to be successful.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time because we could sit here and talk to Tom all afternoon.
It's awesome. Tom, this has been an awesome combo. I mean, I think people are going to really enjoy this one.
I do too. And also,
I'm back if you ever need another topic. So
where can they see more about you and your art? What is your website, Tom?
If they want to look at my website, my last name, just remember my last name is Neel, Neel. And so I go by Thomas Neel. So thomasneel.com. And if you put in Thomas Neel into Amazon and look at the book, Live an Artful Life, you can read some excerpts and things like that and find out about me and things on the website. Now, as far as doing work going forward, I'm still doing some paintings, but I'm doing less and less of it, more and more writing. And I've had a good life. And so I'm not, I don't need a gallery or anything like that. I'm okay. Financially, I did okay. So.
No,
it's awesome.
I appreciate that. Well, listen, we really appreciate your time today, Tom, and for our audience.
Yeah, you guys are great.
This has been another episode of Big Talk About Small Business. And we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Big Talk About Small Business. If you have any questions or ideas for upcoming shows, be sure to head over to our website, www.bigtalkaboutsmallbusiness.com, and click on the Ask the Host button for the chance to have your questions answered on the show. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn at Big Talk About Small Business. And be sure to head over to our website to read articles, browse episodes, and ask questions about upcoming shows.